really think that the bodybuilders back then, that they had to diet harder than the bodybuilders now? That they worked harder, they trained harder? No! Coach Greg, and today we're reviewing how Arnold Schwarzenegger himself got ripped way back in the 1960s. We're going to compare his training and diet style back then to how we think we need to train and eat today. What changes have been made? What can we learn from Arnold himself? We're reviewing his training and eating from 1966. The video is called How Arnold Got Ripped. Arnold's 1966 Mr. Universe Split Routine. This video was put together by Golden Area Bookworm, who has a ton of amazing videos from the legends of the past, so be sure to check him out.
One of the first things I would like to address is the frequency and volume that he actually used. You understand, firstly, the difference between off-season and preparing for competition.
Arnold trained differently when in the off-season versus when he was preparing for competition. In the off-season, he was more into a bulking program, and when it came to competition, he wanted to strip the body fat, and he therefore trained differently. Okay, so what exactly did he do? During the off-season, when he was trying to put on as much muscle as possible, and he was in a calorie surplus, he trained each body part twice a week. Has this changed over the past 55 years? No, we're still advising most people to train each body part twice a week to maximize muscle hypertrophy. However, when it came time to get ripped or shredded for competition, he then trained each muscle group 3 times a week. And why would he do that? Well, back in the day, bodybuilders used to think that when it came time to cut up, that you should do more sets, more reps. Don't rest as long between sets. You want to burn the fat by doing more volume. Train each muscle 3 times a week. Burn off the fat. Do more sets. Burn more calories. What do we think about that theory today? No, we don't do that anymore. When you want to get shredded, you don't train differently. Whatever you did to build up that muscle, keep training that way to keep the muscle that you have when you're dieting. When you're lifting weights to build muscle. You are not going to the gym and lifting weights to burn fat. You will burn some calories when lifting weights. Sure, yeah, okay. But for the most part, you're there to build muscle. Lifting weights does not burn a lot of calories. Cardio is what you're doing to burn calories. Cardio is also important for the heart. So when you're in the gym, don't think, I'm lifting weights to burn fat. Think, I'm lifting weights to build muscle. And that increased muscle size, that will boost my metabolism. Muscle is metabolically active, and the more muscle you have, the more calories you're going to burn. Cardio burns more calories than lifting weights. So if you want to lose a lot of weight, do a lot of cardio. It's going to help melt off the fat.
During the off-season, Arnold would bulk up and use a lower rep range, less volume, and less frequency.
Well, in the off-season, when they were eating more, they used to do less reps. They lowered the reps and lift heavier and rested more between sets versus when it came to cut up, they did higher reps, rested less, and did more sets in volume. What do we think about that now? Well, it's certainly okay to vary up your reps, but listen, you are not going to build more muscle by doing low reps and building less muscle with higher reps. When I was a kid, that's what we heard. If you want to get really jacked, lift super heavy weights for low reps. And if you want to tone, do higher reps. That is not how it works. Whether you're a man, woman, or circle, muscles build the same way for everyone. Doing sets of 1 to 5 is more ideal for getting stronger, but sets of 1 to 5 is not better for building muscle than doing higher rep sets. And I'd argue that doing higher rep sets is better for building muscle because it decreases your chance of getting injured. If you're injured, you can't train. If you can't train, you're not building muscle. Not only that, higher rep sets involve more time under tension, which is one of the key components to building muscle. So if your goal is to build muscle, don't go to the gym and think you should rest a long time between sets, lifting really heavy weights for low reps. That's called powerlifting. But a powerlifter's goal is to maximize strength, not to maximize hypertrophy.
2 times a week per body part would allow him to increase his recovery because he would only train the body part twice a week. He wouldn't be so maxed out.
And think of it, when you go in the gym, you always need to think about recovery. Overtraining, it's not a good thing. If you're training too hard, you're going too often, the muscles can't repair. So if training twice a week allows you to recover and repair muscle, and 3 doesn't, you're not going to get better results training that muscle 3 times a week rather than twice. A lot of people think, oh, I have a weak muscle in my chest. I don't like my chest. I don't like my glutes. It's weaker muscle. I want to grow that. I'm going to train it 3, 4, 5 times a week because I want to build that muscle. Doesn't make sense. Each muscle needs to recover. If you're not recovering, you can't repair effectively. And if you do that, you're not going to build as much muscle as a person who's training twice a week. If you're not getting the gains training each muscle twice a week, add more volume, add more intensity, figure something out. If you're not sore, train harder than last time. If you're always sore, go easier. It's about experimentation. No one program is going to be perfect for everyone. And no matter what, everyone trains different. You might think you're training hard, but you're not. Or you might think you're going easy, but you're going hard. So please, if a training program isn't working for you, look at the program and decide, am I actually following it correctly? Should I be pushing harder, going easier? Just experiment and try and do the best that you can.
And of course, a diet of high protein, moderate carbs and fat was used.
And what about diet? Well, primarily they just ate high protein and moderate carbs and fats. Similar today, everyone knows you need to eat protein to build muscle. But how much? Well, studies show that about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is all you'll ever need to maximize muscle hypertrophy. And moderate carbs and fat, well, frankly, you can eat high fat and low carbs or high carbs and low fat. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter!
What really matters is calories. If you're in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. In a surplus, you will gain weight. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter!
The percentage of the macros. What matters is the total calories you eat at the end of the day. If you're losing weight and you don't want to, eat more. If you're gaining weight and you don't want that, eat less. Less calories. Not less macros, less calories. Whether it comes from fat or carbs, it doesn't matter. Man, there's a lot of The Rock today.
However, if we look at Arnold's routine for competing, you'll see that there is an increased frequency, an increase in volume.
So you can see back in the 1960s, when it came time to diet, did a lot more sets, they rested less. They're trying to burn fat. Not the best way to do it. Just because you're trying to burn fat doesn't mean you need to lighten the load and rest less. What happens if you do that? Well, if you just do rep after rep with light weights and don't rest, you're not building a lot of muscle, you're building endurance. You don't want to go to the gym and build up endurance if your goal is to build bigger muscles. So just because you're on a diet doesn't mean you should train any different. If you do, chances are you're going to be losing some of that muscle.
Moderate weights were actually used as opposed to maximum weights. If only moderate weights are used, one can increase the volume and the frequency without necessarily affecting the recovery.
So as you can see, they tried to turn lifting weights into a form of cardio. Quick tip. Just do the cardio. Why y'all hate on cardio? Lift the weights and then do some cardio after. The amount of calories you're going to burn from resting less between sets with lighter weights and going on and on and on, maybe equivalent to 10, 15 minutes of walking on a treadmill. Just go walk for 10 to 15 minutes on a treadmill and train the best way to build muscle. Whatever the best way is to build muscle, keep doing it. Don't sacrifice the best stimulus for muscle growth to burn more calories.
And it is used to burn fat, muscularize the body, and increase blood flow into the muscles.
You can get the benefits of increased blood flow by just doing an extra set at the end of your workout. For example, you're training chest, finish off with a set of 30 on the bench. You don't have to just stick to one way of training. You can combine both.
And the diet would be very high in protein, moderate fat, and very, very low carbs.
And when it came time to dieting, to getting shredded, well, they kept eating high protein. They kept eating moderate amount of fat, but then they lowered the carbs. Very, very similar to what most people do today. Do you have to do that? Well, no, you could in fact lower your fat. You could in fact lower your carbs. You can take the macros from fats or protein. You don't want to eat no fat. You need to have some, but you're allowed to decrease the fats that you're eating. And what about today? Well, there's several ways you could do it. Yes, you could just lower your carbs, or you could lower your fat, or you could lower a little bit of each. You could eat the same and add cardio. You can in fact eat the exact same number of calories off season to pre-contest by doing more cardio. All that matters is that you're in a calorie deficit at the end of the day. If you're not losing weight, it's because you're eating too many calories in comparison to what you're burning off. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat any fat. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat any carbs. I believe balance is best. Eat a little bit less fat, a little bit less carbs, and maybe up your cardio slightly. If you combine a bit of everything, there are no drastic changes that need to be done.
Well, understand that back then, these bodybuilders did not use cardio. There were no treadmills, there were no exercise bikes.
Back in the day, they didn't have cardio machines. They weren't on elliptical riders, treadmills, bicycles. They weren't doing cardio. Today, we know you can do cardio. You ever see Coach Greg racing on a bicycle? We are doing cardio. Lots of people do cardio. And I'm not the only one. Dmitry Tishesky from Ukraine, he's racing bicycles like Coach Greg, training all the time. He's jacked, he's riding bikes. Used to be an obese strongman competitor, now he's a shredded bodybuilder who's riding bikes, showing that you can in fact have muscle while doing cardio.
There was none of this stuff. No cardio. At most, they would run on the beach.
Running is the worst form of cardio I can think of. There's a lot of eccentric load on the muscle. If you do a lot of running and you try to train legs, it's going to be exceptionally difficult. And for the body to have to recover from both the damage done during running and lifting weights, it's just too much. So if you're a runner and you're trying to look like a bodybuilder, good luck. Gonna be harder than last time. So my suggestion, do some cardio that doesn't involve as much eccentric load on the muscle. My favorite, bike riding. Of course, you knew it was bike riding. I'm able to ride my bike and recover while lifting weights. I can do it all. It's not easy, but it's certainly a lot better than doing a lot of running. So back in the day for cardio, they did a little bit of running. Not very good. When doing cardio, do moderately intense LISS cardio. Don't do HIIT cardio. It's too hard. You're not a professional athlete. You're just looking to go to the gym to build muscle. The cardio you should do is at an easy enough pace that you can recover from it and that you're not sore. That will allow you to burn more calories while still letting you recover and train from the lifting that you're doing.
There were also a lot less drugs like diuretics and fat burners and things that are available nowadays. These supplements or drug enhancements did not exist back then.
So I'm going to call bullshit on everything he just said there. Sorry. So he's saying, back in the day, they didn't have all the drugs that we had now. So they had to burn off, they had to rely on cardio. No, they weren't as shredded. They weren't as ripped. You really think that the bodybuilders back then, that they had to diet harder than the bodybuilders now? That they worked harder, they trained harder? No, just because you're using drugs now doesn't mean you're not training harder than someone then. They were not natural. You think Arnold Schwarzenegger was natural? Well, so am I. I'm also natural. But listen, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Olympia was not shredded. He was pretty lean, definitely in great shape. Certainly more conditioned than most people. But if you compare his physique at his leanest to the leanest physiques of today, it is a night and day difference. So you can't say, oh, we have drugs now and we just take the drugs, all the fat burners, and that's how we get shredded. No, we get shredded for being in a deficit. The drugs, they can help. Of course they can help. But you still have to suffer. You still have to put in the work. So you can see Arnold doing the most muscular here. Not much leaner than Coach Greg in his offseason. So to say, oh, he didn't have drugs and they didn't take fat burners, they didn't do this and that. Look at the result. If Arnold Schwarzenegger had the same fat burners as now, he wouldn't have been leaner than the bodybuilders today. And why? It's not because they couldn't. It's because they had a different standard. The standard was not, you need to have 4% body fat and strided glutes to win a show. You did not have that. They didn't want that. Different standards by the judges set different standards for the athletes. Today's standards are way over the top, mind-blowing, crazy shredded. That is the look they want, and that is why bodybuilders are dieting to such an extreme to get shredded. That's why they're taking those fat burners to get to that shredded look. It's a beauty pageant after all, and with today's beauty standard, it's shredded. You need to be mind-blowing peeled. If the judges said, well, we don't want you to be that lean, then guys like Chris Bumstead wouldn't show up with 4% body fat. They'd show up with 7% body fat, the way Arnold looked. They would be bigger and fuller, but less shredded. So I don't agree with, they had to just do cardio and lift weights 3 times a week to burn fat because they didn't have fat burners. No, they didn't do cardio because they didn't need to. They didn't need to get that shredded. They had to get pretty ripped, but not crazy ripped. So when dieting for competition, Arnold trained arms, delts, and legs 3 times a week on alternating days while training chest and back on the other days. So essentially he did a 2-day split and did it 3 times per week. What do I think of that? I think it's not ideal. I think he would have been better off doing a 3-day split and following that twice a week. Or if he wanted to, he could do a 2-day split and train 4 days a week like Coach Greg's doing. That's the program that I'm doing, a 2-day split where I train my entire body twice a week. And what do I do on my other days? Well, I'm riding my bike. I'm also riding my bike on the days I'm lifting weights. So I'm riding my bike a lot and I'm lifting a little bit less, but my goal is not to maximize muscle growth. It's to be the best that I can be, both cardio and physique. I want muscles and I want fitness. I want a little bit of both. You're allowed to train the way you want to train. You don't have to avoid cardio just so you can get the biggest muscles ever. It doesn't matter. If you want big muscles, sure, go for it. But if you want to be healthy, ensure you're doing 150 minutes of cardio a week.
As you see, each body part is trained 3 times a week in preparation for the Mr. Universe. That is, to get cut and to get ripped. On Sundays, he would rest.
So seeing as his goal was to get shredded for competition, he easily could have just trained his entire body twice a week and added cardio. Or he could have just ate less food. Either way will work as long as you're in a calorie deficit. Ending it here. GregDoucette.com for coaching. Greg Doucette, IIP Pro. The bloopers are over there. Watch for the bloopers. Follow me in the Grab the Talk. Subscribe. Click the bell button. Do it. Do it. Arnold would say, do it. Do it. Buy one of my freaking cookbooks. And until next time, do it. I'm out.